guys, welcome back to another episode of Restoration Talks. And in this video, we are going to answer the top 10 questions that our customers have about water flooding and water remediation. And I'm joined today by my expert technician, Liam. Thank you for joining us once again. And these are some questions from our viewers. These are, I guess the top 10 most common questions on our blog. And who better to ask than one of our master technicians who deals with this pretty much every single day. So one of the top questions we get is, hey, what is the cost to restore a flooded room or a flooded bathroom in a home? Like, what are the typical costs?
I'd imagine that the typical water damage cost is usually between $1,000 to $3,000, depending on size. If it is only isolated to one room, that's definitely on the smaller end of the spectrum, with about $500 to $1,000.
Yeah, that's pretty average, I would say. Most of the job sizes that I've seen, especially with that kind of damage specifically, is typically around that range. Mm-hmm. So, obviously it's going to vary. Your mileage will vary with that because, everything is situational. But that's about the cost that you can expect. We get this question a lot very often. They ask, why can't I clean up and dry up the water damage myself?
Well, I would imagine it would just be the tools. We have the ability to get it to a dry standard, and then the common knowledge with our people. You have to get your home to a dry standard so you don't have any secondary damage. You could grow mold in a home, you could have dry rot, you can't see behind the walls, you don't know if there's insulation there, and we have tools to test all of that.
And I think that leads me to my next question is, hey, what's the process for a professional? What is it that they can do that I can't?
We have to monitor all of the psychometrics of everything in the home and how to dry it out adequately, given the moisture content in the materials and the moisture that's in the air as well. And then we also needed to determine whether it was a clean water source or a dirty water source.
Yeah, and I would also expect, also with that question, just to add, there's also going to be things that you really just can't see with the naked eye. I think it would be far-fetched to think that, somebody would go out and get all the tools necessary to perform the job. To a high degree standard, right? Because ultimately you want to make sure that the problem area that's affected is restored back to its original state. And I think that's kind of hard to do when you're just kind of eyeing things and not really measuring things going along.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a very strict protocol when it comes to doing something like that. What's the typical time that it takes to clean a water loss affected area?
To dry it out properly, it's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 days.
No, I'm glad you said that, because one of the question right after this is, hey, why is it that my property is monitored so often?
Well, a lot of times we like to make sure that the equipment is working correctly, make sure our psychometrics match up with what the equipment is slated to be doing, and make sure that it is doing that, and to monitor the different areas. Say we have a wet material over here, it's the highest reading, so we want to isolate that because it could be dry over there after 2 days. So we want to make sure if we have to adjust any equipment and isolate certain areas that are troublesome for drying, that we can do that. And then plus also, if you're going through insurance, a lot of insurance companies require us to do daily monitoring so they can warrant the charges on the equipment.
Great point, Liam. The next question from our community comes from a gentleman here. He says, do I have to use the restoration company the insurance company recommends?
No, you do not. You're at liberty to use whoever you please. They do have preferred providers through the insurance companies, but if you know and trust a local company, as long as they have, we don't make our own pricing. We use all of the same pricing that's accepted throughout all insurance companies, and any reputable contractor would have that as well.
Awesome. And the last question here that I have from our community, oftentimes when we do a restoration and we especially when we remove water, there are chemicals that are applied to obviously disinfect the area. And some of our viewers have a question of whether or not these chemicals that are put in place, are they harmful? Are they harmful to children or pets?
Well, if we're doing a water damage in somebody's home, then we would use a plant-based antimicrobial, and that is not harmful to you or your family. Now, if we were to go a more aggressive approach with the chemicals that we would use, we'd obviously would have already prior to that asked you to leave the home because there's something else going on there.
Very good point. So a lot of we use, essentially it's eco-friendly products for the most part.
Yep, plant-based.
Wow. So that's very, very important. I want to thank you so much. I think these are very, very important questions from the community. And if you have a question, please leave us a comment or question below the video. to be answered in a future episode of Restoration Talks. I want to thank my man Liam for joining us today and answering these questions. And thank you, the viewer. Until next time, this is Aiden from Restoration Talks. Thank you.